you're so committed, you went out and bought that, Mike?
Oh, fortunately, my good friend Mark, we're about the same size. I often get called Mark, so I'm sure that's going to happen a few times today. So that'll be great. But anyway, as soon as church service is over, this will be on. So anyhow, and then I have my new Christmas sweater. It's never too early to have Christmas sweaters on, right? So I figured Thanksgiving's over, I can go ahead and wear that. So, all right, we're going to be in Ecclesiastes, and we'll talk about a little background of the book, and then we will get started in chapter 1. The book of Ecclesiastes is a little bit controversial. It wasn't regularly accepted into the canon of the Bible for many, many centuries because it didn't seem to flow with the rest of the Bible. If any of you are familiar with the book of Ecclesiastes, it can seem very pessimistic. In the very opening, it says, all is meaningless. You're like, wait, that's in the Bible? Everything is meaningless? Yeah, that's how it starts. And it's not till the conclusion that you get any real positive spin. And Ecclesiastes is a great book. Ecclesiastes is attributed to Solomon because of the opening verse. In verse 1 it says, the words of the preacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. That automatically makes you think of Solomon. Of course, we know Solomon. We know he was the guy who wrote the Proverbs. He wrote Song of Solomon. He was known for his wisdom. We're going to read a lot of verses in the first couple of chapters that really sound like Solomon. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more. In Hebrew, this book, in the Hebrew Bible, this book is called Kohelet. So I know that's a mouthful, but Kohelet, which means preacher or teacher or one who calls for the assembly. Okay? We get in the Greek and in Latin, we get ecclesia, which is where they get Ecclesiastes. And if you grew up in any kind of maybe a high church kind of thing, like maybe the Catholic Church, Lutheran Church, whatever, you might hear that phrase ecclesiastical more frequently, and it typically meant like the church, big church kind of things, the ecclesiastical components of the church, that could be a big thing. So, but the idea was that it was the person who would call the assembly together to hear a message. That's what Kohelet is. It was considered part of the wisdom literature in the Hebrew. So that was part of the Ketuvim. Several months ago we kind of talked about how the Bible was set up, and the Ketuvim is part of the Hebrew Bible. It's part of the wisdom literature. In the Old Testament, we have that same kind of a structure where we have the wisdom literature, which is like Psalms, Proverbs, Song of Songs, Job, and Ecclesiastes. So it's kind of grouped in that way. Some references might call it the poetry books. So we kind of have those references for us. Another reason it's attributed to Solomon is there's a belief it's sort of like the proverb or Song of Songs was written in Solomon's youth. The Proverbs were more his Middle Ages, and then Ecclesiastes was written in his old age. And so when you read the book, you may get this sort of pessimistic feeling of it. That kind of fits with that explanation of it. But really what we see here in this opening even is there is an anonymous author who is writing the book of Ecclesiastes who has a character called the teacher. Okay? In the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon's name is never referenced. It is referenced in Song of Songs, Song of Solomon, or in Proverbs. So that is a reason that some scholars don't believe this was written by Solomon, that Ecclesiastes was written by Solomon. There's an anonymous author who's writing this book from the narrative of Solomon. There was a genre during, say, like the Babylonian captivity of the royal fictional narrative. This was a common type of narrative. that time knew Solomon was dead for 500 years, but it's like the writer was using him as the character to deliver the information that's in the book of Solomon. We'll dig into that a little bit more. There's not a lot we really have to say about that, but that is something to consider here. If we go along with the idea that Solomon wrote this, it was probably written in the 10th century BC. If Solomon is not the author, then it would be more between 450 and 180 BC, and probably written after the Babylonian exile. So, and you know, I can be sort of a Bible nerd, so I get kind of excited about that stuff. If you don't care about any of that, that's okay. We'll get into some better stuff as we go along. But I kind of dig that stuff. So since I have read it, I was going to share it with you. We're going to see different themes in the book of Ecclesiastes that are very modern. Okay, like when we read through this book, we are going to say, "Oh yeah, that describes our world in 2025." You know, so whether it was written in the 10th century BC or written in the 2nd or 3rd century BC, we're going to see things that are relevant for us today. We're going to see possessions, of fame, of pleasure, of wisdom. Has any of that stopped over the years? No. We see it more and more. We'll see there's a repetitive nature to humanity. There's a circularity that is talked about. And that's where it leads to this all is meaningless. We are going to see that there's a lot of metaphors in there. And so a metaphor is just a phrase that's describing something that's easy to come up with. And some of those are easy to understand. So like he'll use the phrase under the sun. Well, so that's used like 30 times in Ecclesiastes. So that's just life, right? Life under the sun. Who's living? Those who are under the sun. So that's just kind of how life goes on. Chasing the wind, right? Chasing the wind. So I don't want to hear people singing dust in the wind. It's chasing the wind, right? Chasing the wind. Although speaking of great songs, and Mark cannot answer this question, but what is a 1960s popular song that quotes Ecclesiastes over and over?
Is it by the Birds?
It is by the Birds.
Turn, turn, turn.
Turn, turn, turn. Excellent. So look at that. Just even as recently as the 1960s, the book of Ecclesiastes was used in a rock song that was like a huge hit. That might have been a #1 hit for all I know. It certainly was a huge hit for the Birds. So anyway, so it just, again, shows you that things in the Bible have a relevance even in pop culture. Ecclesiastes starts off with a metaphor that's Havel. So let's look here in verse 2. And would someone like to read, just to give my voice a break here, would someone like to read just verse 2 for us there? Okay, Molly?
Is it on? Okay. Meaningless, meaningless, says the teacher. Utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless.
Okay, that kind of sums it up. We can stop the Bible study right there. It is all meaningless. Does anyone have a different translation? I think that's probably what, NIV?
The NLT says the same thing.
NLT says the same thing. The New American says, vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Now, you know, vanity, they don't mean like, you know, where you sit and do your makeup. They don't just mean, oh, I'm vain, I love the way I look. Especially don't love the way I look wearing the shower. That's a different story. But you know, although Molly said I look good in red, so I might have to incorporate that more into my color scheme. But vanity here is that in English it would be more that meaning of the word meaningless. So we see that it's worthless is another way that it's phrased. Okay. Unsatisfactory would be another definition. But in the Hebrew, Havel the meaning is vapor or smoke or breath. It's used over 38 times, or 38 to 40 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. So you think about smoke, right? Let me do it this way. When you think of smoke, what do you think of? What are the characteristics of smoke or vapor?
Cloudy, like you can't see through it.
Okay, cloudy, you may not be able to see through it, okay.
Temporary.
Temporary, okay.
Pollution.
Oh, okay, that's a different thought. Yeah, that works. Pollution.
Glory too.
Okay, Lori?
I think of fire,
Okay.
and I also, depending on what causes the smoke, it can burn your eyes, it can choke you, or if it's something that's healing, it can actually bring more health to you.
Okay.
Smells bad.
It can smell bad. Sometimes it smells nice. It can smell bad. Okay, yeah, so lots of different ideas for the word smoke or vapor. I think one of the main things is it goes away, right? It's not a permanent thing. Smoke will, I don't know, evaporate or dissipate. That's probably the better word. It will go, it'll just stop, right? If you light a match, there'll be a little bit of smoke, and then it's gone. Fog, right? Fog, be in the morning, there could be a dense fog all morning, and then the sun burns off the fog, and you can have a clear, beautiful day, right? So it's transitory. It goes away. So that's the metaphor that Ecclesiastes is going to use over and over for what our life is about. When something is missing, and the piece that would be missing is that relationship with God. Okay? So they're going to give a lot of metaphors, a lot of examples of what man does. And then he's going to sum it all up with, that's why you need to follow God. And he's going to give all of these examples, all the things that we may think are important to have, all the things that we may even long for in our life. The writer is going to show how all of that is really meaningless, or it's just smoke. It's a vapor. It's going to disappear. Things come, things go. And we're going to see that over and over. We're going to see this idea of chasing the wind. So, I was thinking about other metaphors that we use that are maybe more current or more culturally relevant. Chasing the wind is pretty good. I think we all can understand that idea. But I was thinking of like the rat race, right? When I say, oh, they're in a real rat race, we understand that idea. That, it's rats going through a maze trying to get to the cheese. And that sometimes we get caught up, if you're working, you can get in that rat race of wanting to get to the top, get to the goal, get to the finish. If you're thinking along those lines, what would be other metaphors for that example? For like, think about chasing the wind or think about the rat race. What are other things that might come to mind for you when you think about society as a whole? Yes?
Someone says, things can disappear in the blink of an eye.
Oh, I love that. That's a great one. The things in the blink of an eye, right? It just happens so quick, you missed it, right? Or it may not have lasted. It may not, it's like, whoa, what was that? Sometimes we can't even capture it, right? That flash, right? I like that. Any others? Okay.
Well, there's time. Time flies.
Okay.
It's running out.
Time flies. That is a good one. Yes, or you never have enough time, right? Yes, Lori. Did you have your hand up? Sorry.
A hamster wheel.
Oh,
Yeah, a
good
hamster
one.
wheel.
Yes, hamster wheel. I love that idea. Or like being on a treadmill, right? Just like this endless kind of thing. You're just moving along. You're going nowhere. Moving, but going nowhere. Yeah.
Well, we used to always say keeping up with the Joneses was kind of that phrase we would use, which was ironic because the Joneses did live across the street from us and they did have more money.
Yes, keeping up with the Joneses. That's a great one. Okay, Mark.
I've got a quote journey and say the wheel in the sky keeps on turning.
Oh.
All right,
Good one.
love it. Wheel in the sky keeps on turning. But I think they took that from Ezekiel, but that's all right. That's a good metaphor there.
Another Bible song.
Okay, that's good. I was thinking of things like climbing the ladder, right? Climbing the ladder of success. You know, I think especially like my daughter really represents this in my life. You know, she's recently got another promotion. It's funny how though, in my day when you got promotions, that usually meant more money. Not for her. They promote them, they don't always give them more money. But anyway, she just got this promotion and she was super excited about it. And also, she's very much into this idea of climbing the ladder for where she works. You know, we have sort of these ideas of like chasing your tail. We have the idea of the American dream, right? If you work hard enough, you can have success. You can buy a home, although talking to my kids, that's a little more challenging these days. You know, but buying a home, you know, achieving everything that America has. I was reading an article recently that, so the baby boom generation, that would be like Mark and older. The baby boom generation is, you know, has all of this wealth that they accumulated over the years, really pursuing that American dream. You know, they have generational wealth that more than likely the younger generations will not achieve. You know, they may inherit some of that generational wealth, but it's like achieving it on their own would be a different story. And I'm not saying that's true or not true. I'm just saying it's a topic of conversation that I've recently seen. You know, we have this idea of having a nest egg. Anyone who's close to retirement or in retirement, there's a concern, right? Oh, inflation eats that away. You know, oh, cost of living increases. You know, I'm living off Social Security or whatever the story is. You know, there's this fear of my nest egg is not, how much do I need to retire? You know, I went out last night with a good friend of mine, and he's close to retirement, and that's a big concern he has. Do I have enough to retire? You know, what kind of a budget do I need to live on that? We talk about like the next big thing, right? So we're like always looking ahead. There's going to be something that is fantastic ahead, right? We haven't got there yet. It's the next big thing. You know, it's going to be bigger than the Slinky, right? Or, you know, bigger than the iPhone. There's something out there. Of course, now everything is AI, right? AI is huge. You know, AI actually gave me a great quote that I'm going to refer to later in my lesson. And I asked AI, because it's a good friend of mine, and I think it's good for me. I love it because it's listening always. So, you know, you always have to be careful. But AI gave me this technology quote. I said, oh, who's that quote from? Because I had having this morning conversation with AI. You know, who's that quote from? Oh, no, I made it up. I thought it fit with what you were asking for. I thought that was incredible. How incredible. But anyway, I'm not again saying the positives or negatives of that. It's just incredible that exists now as an option, right? Think about if you ever saw that movie 2001: Space Odyssey, and the computer HAL is having a conversation with the guy. You know, it's like we're living in some of that now, right? We're living in that now. So we talk about these things. You know, we have the phrase of like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Right? You know, we have these things where we all understand there's something more we want. We're pursuing something. We're typically not satisfied. I'm not saying everybody, I'm just saying in general. We're not satisfied with what we have. We're looking for more. And the book of Ecclesiastes addresses many of those ideas, and we're going to see that over and over as we go through the book. There's also a longing for other time periods, right? Somehow we think the past is better than the present, maybe better than the future. We're currently in a society where there are large segments of the population that believe we need to make America great again. Anyone heard that phrase? Heard that phrase? Yes. So what does that imply? That things are not great now, right? It implies there was a better time somewhere in the past. You know, we have lots of books and movies on time travel, which I love those kinds of stories. I love that idea. But why is that? Because people think going back is going to somehow fix or be better than where they are. Right? And then if you want to time travel to the future, well, it's because the future is going to be better than what we have now. I'm a huge Star Trek fan, love Star Trek. Love Star Trek more than Star Wars, but I love Star Trek. And, you know, you look at how beautiful Star Trek universe is, right? The ships look gorgeous. Compared to, say, something like The Matrix, right? The Matrix future is very bleak and grimy and dirty. But the Star Trek future is amazing, beautiful. They can do so many, humanity has evolved to the prime directive. If you're not a Trekkie, that's okay, I feel sorry for you. But if you're not a Trekkie, you may not understand some of those references. But this idea that somehow what we have now is not enough. That either the past was better or the future will be better. And for some people that can be true. I don't want to discount that. But as a whole, we always don't appreciate what we have. And the book of Ecclesiastes it addresses these things. All right, let's go ahead and let's get into the text a little bit more. So we read 1 and 2 already, so we're identifying the writer here as Solomon. There may be an anonymous author who's using Solomon to kind of convey the narrative of the story. Then he says in verse 2 how everything is meaningless. Vanity of vanities, says the preacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity, all is meaningless in our English understanding. And if someone could read for me verses 3 through 8. No, I'm sorry, 3 through 7.
I got you.
All right, thanks, Gail.
You said 3 through
7. 3 through 7.
What does man gain by all the toil at which he toils under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down and hastens to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Around and around goes the wind, and on its circuits to the wind turns. All streams run to the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the streams flow, there they will flow again.
Okay, thank you. So we see here, just starting off, he's talking about what advantage does man have in all his work, which he does under the sun. So he's asking this, not quite a rhetorical question, he's phrasing the question, okay? What's life mean, right? Don't people pursue the meaning of life? You know, do we come to church in some ways to get meaning for our life? We believe that this book, we believe that a relationship with God, that a relationship with Jesus Christ is going to prove meaningful. It's going to give us something more than we already had in our life, or already have in our life. We want that. We want a meaning. We want a purpose. But the writer is going to say, that could be meaningless. It could be worthless. Wait, what? That really goes against so much of what I've been taught, of what the Bible says. But this is in the Bible, and it talks like that. So we want to dig into that, to understand that. So a generation goes, a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. If you were to just take that verse by itself, what does that say to you? What are you thinking about with that verse?
I feel like it goes back to that, like the short type of thing, you know?
People come, people pass, the next group comes, and they will pass.
Yes.
It's just be recycled.
Yes, very good. I like that recycle word too. Yeah, because you think about the recycle symbol, right? The arrow is chasing itself, right? Okay, good. Anybody else?
Well, the other side of that question is, if you don't believe there's God, then what is it? It's nothing.
Okay,
That's kind of tough to say.
that's right. So there's not, so if I don't believe in God, I can believe there's nothing. Yes.
The core of, the core of operational flow of the standard of living, whether it's gas, groceries, paying taxes, no matter what, spending, saving,
Yeah.
operational flow, no matter how much it changes in its power dynamic, you know, it's still saying there's transportation, there's shelter.
Yeah.
And it will continually stay the same in that process, no matter what generation goes on.
Yeah, yeah, we have basic needs that have to be fulfilled, or the one we want them to be fulfilled. Okay, Nancy?
Be rich and have everything and all power, amounts to nothing.
Okay. And that's gonna be a big lesson in Ecclesiastes, it amounts to nothing. Yes, Lori? You're on mute, Lori. Oh, there you go. We still can't hear you. We can't hear you, Lori, I don't know. It doesn't look like you're on mute. Well, let's see if we can come back to you.
I'll figure it out.
Periodically, just yell at us and we'll see if we can hear you. That work? Did I muting him? No? Gavin is trying his trickery, his magic. All right, anybody else? Okay, so, you know, when you think about this, a generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. So we have that constant. The earth is that backdrop, right? Like I was at a play last night, and they had the stage, the set, you know, the props and whatnot that were out there. And periodically at the end of the scene, the stagehands would come in, they would remove certain props, add other props. But the basic structure of the set stayed the same. There was still the stage, there was the things that made it look like a room, there was another part that made it look like a second room. And, you know, no one is looking at that thinking, oh wow, what a great house. No, we all understand that this is a set, we understand the props that they're using. Two of the characters were playing dogs. We knew they weren't dogs. We knew they were human or trained dogs. But there's that suspension of belief, right? Suspension of belief, where we're looking at that going, oh, we're getting into the story. It actually brought tears to my eyes. I was saying, even though I know this is not real, this is a play, I was emotionally involved enough in the story that I was getting teary-eyed. And it's like, I even had to tell myself, this is not real. I know that that actor who's dead is going to come back out at the end to take a bow. But it was so powerful how it moved me. Now, that's sort of neither here nor there for this point, but the idea of this backdrop, we live on a backdrop, this is the planet Earth. And the Earth has gone through various stages. You know, we can see the effect of deforestation on the environment. We can see the effect of climate change. We can see different things. We can see the transformation of land into farmland, now farmland into housing. We see these things happening. But again, nothing new. You know, we're experiencing it maybe new. But remember back when Horace Greeley said, "Go west, young man." So what was there? All these people from those large East Coast cities, or eastern cities, moved west. And wherever they moved, they had to build houses. They cut down trees. They planted crops. That has been going on for generations. There's nothing new. You know, when man was living in caves and building fires and hunting, you know, what is it, hunting-gatherers, you know, that kind of thing, hunter-gatherers, you know, that transformed into something different. But the earth was still there. The earth was that backdrop. So a generation goes, a generation comes. We may feel like, oh, this is the worst time ever. This is the most scary time ever. This is terrible what's going on. And so that could be true. But we don't know because generations come, generations go. We don't know what it's going to look like 20 years from now. It could be worse than whatever we imagine it looks like now. You know, 20 years ago looked worse for many people, 40 years ago, 60 years ago. It was interesting, I was reading this book, and so, you know, in America, we are very familiar with the Holocaust, right? We understand the genocide of Jewish people under Hitler, and even that name Hitler. I had never met anyone named Hitler in my life, right? No one named Hitler. Yet, this book, which was set in South Africa, there was a character and his name was Hitler. Because in South Africa, that name did not mean what it meant, say, in Europe or in America. So he was Hitler, and he was a dancer and a singer. So they were performing at a Jewish school. And as he performed, the fellow dancers were yelling, "Go Hitler, go Hitler, go Hitler." And of course that Jewish audience was like, they felt like it was an assault on them. And when they approached, one of the leaders of the school approached the organizer, "What are you doing?" He thought they were upset about the hip-hop dancing. He didn't understand they were upset about the chanting of "Go Hitler," because that was just their friend's name. Because to him, to the author of the story, a name like Cecil Rhodes was worse than Hitler. Now, if you don't know who Cecil Rhodes is, he was an Englishman who was involved in sort of the colonization of Africa. He's largely responsible for many of the borders that were drawn as Africa was colonized. And that led to massive wars and chaos, which is still in effect in Africa today. And millions have died because of Cecil Rhodes and his argument. I had never thought of that, never understood that. And I like to think I'm pretty well educated and I know history. I mean, I knew who Cecil Rhodes was, but I never made that comparison. Then I started thinking about that more. So like if you were a Cambodian and you grew up in the 70s, was Hitler really that bad to you? No, you would think of Pol Pot, right? Now if you were Russian, you might think, oh yeah, Hitler was really bad. But let me tell you about Stalin. It's all relative, right? When we talk about some of these things. And that's, of course, a horrible example is of genocide, but it illustrates the point of generation goes, generation comes. For some, one person's worst atrocity isn't a blip on the radar compared to someone else's. And the book of Ecclesiastes is going to take us through a journey about those things for us to understand what is the meaning of life. What are we here for? Not the Monty Python version of the movie. But anyway, I'm sorry, I have to throw those things out there for Mark to keep him interested. So let's go on. In verse 5 it says, so 5 through 7, we kind of link that together. The sun rises, the sun sets, it rises, it hastens, I love that, hastening to its place, like the sun is hurrying to get back up again. Of course, scientifically we understand there's just the orbit, the earth travels around the sun, but it's a nice illustration. Blowing toward the south, the wind, then turning toward the north, the wind continues swirling along. On its circular courses, the wind returns. The rivers flow into the sea, but the sea is not full. To the place where the rivers flow, there they flow again. So again, it's the thing about, even in whatever year this was written, they understood this idea of the water is going to evaporate, it goes back up into the sky, and it rains back down. That there's this cycle, right? The water cycle. But you see that circularity. We see it in nature. We see it in our universe. And, the example of sun, the example of wind, the example of water. Life is the same. It is all circular. There is nothing new under the sun, is going to be his point. And when we acknowledge that and accept that, there is a certain freedom that comes, because then I'm not grasping with everything I have to hold on to the small little things that I have possessed. Right? I've got to do everything I can. I've got to hold on to this house. I got to hold on to that nest egg. I got to do whatever it takes. If I have to step on other people to get there, that's okay. We can see that in our world. we're powerful, so we're gonna oppress you or keep you down because we're powerful. You know, so we see that in our society. But it's not brand new. That's been going on for generations. It's been going on like the earth evolves or revolves around the sun. It's going on just like the wind. You know, those things have not changed. And that's what we'll see. And then this last section, verses 8 through 11, says, all things are wearisome. Man is not able to tell it, the eye is not satisfied with seeing, nor is the ear filled with hearing. That which has been is that which will be. And that which has been done is that which will be done. So there is nothing new under the sun. Is there anything of which one might say, see, this, it is new. Already it has existed for ages, which were before us. There is no remembrance of earlier things, and also of the later things which will occur. There will be for them no remembrance among those who will come later still. I was reading that, I wrote in my Bible, it is what it is. You know, I just thought, oh, that's a great phrase for what this is talking about. So I was listening to this podcast, and he goes, what's the name of your great-great-grandfather? Full name. We probably have a genealogy book, maybe, somewhere, that I might be able to find. But I have no idea.
You said great-great?
Great-great-grandfather. So maybe some of you have it. I think like how in our culture, some people are really into genealogies. So they've invested a lot of time tracing this. And we have all those DNA and ancestry type of platforms that enable you to trace back. And you go, oh, I have descendant or ancestors that came over on the Mayflower, right? Or things like that. People will trace their roots back to things. The point being that I don't really remember much about, my grandmother, I remember her. I have like some vague memories of one of my grandfathers. My other grandfather died, I was like 3, so I don't have any memories of him. So it's the whole thing. It's like sometimes we think we are so important. We are the center of life. But you know what? 2 generations from now, we'll be lucky if if we have descendants, first off. I have 3 older children that aren't married and don't have any kids, and I don't know if that's in my future. So that may be it. Hopefully they'll remember my name as long as they live. But, for some, there's not going to be that. There's not going to be that history unless it's written down in some kind of genealogy. All right, so I've utterly depressed us all to know that everything is meaningless. So enjoy the rest of the service, and we'll see you next week. Come on back, tell your friends, because it's good stuff. But the thing about this is it helps set the stage, if you will, forgive me for using that example again. It sets the tone for how we need to understand a relationship with God. We need to understand it's not God plus all the things I have. It's not God plus my hard work.
Amen.
It's not God plus all my goals that I have in life. I don't need fame and wealth. I don't need those things. I need God. And that's going to be the most important thing. So that's where the writer is going to take us. So we're going to stop there. So next week we'll continue on in chapter 1. And I know today was a little less questions. We'll do better with that as we go on. But I always like to get a lot of that introduction stuff out there for everyone. Let's go ahead. Any prayer requests? We can do that. We got a couple minutes here. Any prayer requests? My friend Bob is going through a different round of chemo now, so I just like to keep praying for him. No? Oh,
Be thankful that Dan's here with us this morning.
really grateful that Dan is here. We've been praying for Dan and his recovery, so it's great to see him. Glad you're here. Oh.
Renee, can we pray for you? I have a trip coming up to pray for safety and all that.
Okay. Renee's taking a trip for some health things as well as right, let's go ahead and pray. Father God, thank you so much as you bless us with so much. And God, just as we read a book like Ecclesiastes, please give us help in understanding this book. Give us the wisdom to understand your message there for us, that we can understand the need for you more than the need for the world and the possessions that are in there. God, we're grateful that we have hard lessons in the Bible that are there to teach us different things. And we pray we can learn those lessons. God, we want to bring to you people that are in need or are asking for your help, your support, or just to praise you for the answers that you've given already. And pray for my friend Bob, just as his doctors are trying a different type of chemo to help with his cancer. Pray this will be successful, that it could prolong his life, that he can be here to enjoy that time with his wife and his son and his friends. God, I pray for him just as he battles with that. God, we're so grateful for Dan being able to be here, for the success of his surgery and his time that he's recovering so nicely. We pray that will continue on for him. Thank you for answering those prayers, God. And for Renee, as she has her upcoming trip, we just pray that she would find what she needs there, be successful, you would keep her safe as she journeys. And we're just grateful for your hand in our lives, that you are there protecting us and being with us. God, we're looking forward to a great service today, and we're proud in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
All right,
Thank
go
you.
49ers.
Woo!
I had to say that. But
Hey,
again,
Lori, can you hear
we're
us?
not here to enjoy.
Hi.
And you what?
Can you hear us, Lori? Say, Lori. I'll take this one. Thank you. Bye, Lori. Have a great Sunday. Oh, I can almost hear you, but I can't. I tried to fix. Oh wait, now do it. I got you.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. Bye, guys.
Thanks, Mike.
Oh, we can hear
you now, Lord.
I fixed it.
I
Just
think
took
it
me
was
to the end.
divine intervention and my comment wasn't needed. Nice to meet you. Bye, Mark.
Bye, Lori.
It just took me to the end of.
Me and my husband always sit right here. I'm gonna go to the kids.
How are you?
Thank you, sir.
And I'm for you.
Girl, I'm here. Might have to drink another cup.
Here, Gavin.
Our administrators.
Thank you, sir.
As your reward for class year, you get special communion cups again.
Oh, I love it.
I'm really
Be the man. I'll be the guy in the second row for y'all.
How we doing?
Good, good. How are you?
Wow.
All right.
Hi.
How's the tea? How'd you guys like?
It was good. I enjoyed it. Yeah. I was like, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I'm gonna order another batch on this upcoming pay period. So, oh yeah.
Make you feel like you're there. Like I'm here.
Yeah, I'm gonna try to get the leaves this time. It's almost like $100, but still.
Then you can control how much you're getting.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, but it's worth every penny for me. So, good.
Well, I appreciate it. It was good. It made me feel like I was somewhere